That's for Minnesota, you know. That's called the Great Big Minnesota Scam with one of the dumbest governors ever in history. I love this Ilhan Omar, whatever the hell her name is, with the little turban. I love her. She comes in, does nothing but bitch. She's always complaining. She comes from a country where, I mean, it's considered about the worst country in the world, right? They have no military, they have no nothing, they have no parliament. They don't know what the hell the word parliament means. They have nothing, they have no police. They police themselves, they kill each other all the time. I love it. She comes to our country and she's always complaining about the Constitution allows me to do this. We ought to get her the hell out. She married her brother in order to get in, right? She married her brother. Can you imagine if Donald Trump married his sister? Beautiful. She's a beautiful person. If I married my sister to get my citizenship, do you think I'd last for about 2 hours, or would it be something less than that? She married her brother to get in. Therefore, she's here illegally. She should get the hell out. Throw her the hell out. She does nothing but complain.
Huge focus on bringing negativity to the Somali community and connecting them to the Feeding Our Future scandal. But what we have to remember is, number one, that was a very, very, very small group of individuals involved in that fraud. They're being held accountable under the law. Many, if not all of them, will face time in prison. But the face of that scandal was actually a white woman named Amy Bach. So I'm going to say the quiet part out loud today. That particular person is who gave access for the scandal to happen in the first place. And yet the focus is on Somali individuals. If it weren't for a white woman opening the door, none of it would have even happened in the first place. So let's be honest here. But we don't hear Donald Trump and ICE and their minions calling out white people who engage in fraud or crime or abuse. And I'm from a community that has unfortunately been impacted as a result of white people's crimes against black people that have gone unrecognized, that have never been addressed, and where we continue to be mistreated and stereotyped, even though our community for decades upon decades have been the ones who have suffered as a result of white privilege, white power, and white supremacy.
This is literally just the tip of the iceberg. Whether you're talking about the voter fraud that was exposed there, or you talk about the massive welfare fraud, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not just the Somali population. This is across the board. And this has been Democrats' game plan. I mean, flood the country with immigrants from all over the world, set up these welfare programs, don't check eligibility, and make people dependent on government. And from their standpoint, it's worked beautifully. And we're just scratching the surface here. That's my concern is when you hear, well, 500 illegal, but just illegal registration didn't impact the vote. Are you kidding me? There's massive fraud. I mean, I'm listening to apparently a former CIA operative talking about how they shave votes, not in Democrat counties. They'll shave a few percent using the machines in Republican counties where people aren't really suspecting it, where the vote total should have been 60%, but it's only 58%. Again, I don't know how they do it exactly, but I do know that we don't even come close to investigate voter fraud or welfare fraud. We don't put anywhere near the amount of effort that we should be putting into this.
Well, Senator, you just broke some huge news there. You're listening to do you have a CIA whistleblower that is saying that they're...
and again, is this true? Again, you hear all these things. This is on podcasts, some apparently CIA operative who's... But let's face it, I believe the CIA has doctored elections in other countries. That's probably indisputable.
Yes.
Those same types of operations, do those occur here in America? My guess is they do. Do I have hard evidence? No. But again, we just don't investigate it. The people, we're all harmed by it, but for example, the losing candidate, They don't have the funds. We don't have the time yet to certify these elections. So election fraud goes largely uninvestigated. We uncover, again, in your earlier segment, 500 phony registrations. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, you have the Secretary of State there, straight-faced, saying that doesn't mean they voted. Right? It's like, well, what do you think the voter registration is for? How do you get away with that? I mean, like, at what point, and we did this during the Bud Light boycott, frankly, and the same rules apply. At what point don't you just like sit and target Minnesota and use Minnesota as an example and take Minnesota and just say, you know what? Yeah, we can't cover all the fraud in all 50 states. We know there's fraud in all 50 states. We can track all the fraud in all 50 states. We can see the filings, but let's just use Minnesota and make them an example and show the American public that they can rig elections, that they are rigging elections. They're doing so with criminal alien communities or with imported communities like the Somalis that have obviously no principles, no mooring, no allegiance to America, except for using it as a piggy bank for funding Muslim terrorism. Like, why not just, it seems like they're doing that. It seems like the House is now doing that. There are 4 different organs of the Trump administration that are now investigating. Will we see a Senate investigation?
Yes. But again, I think you're right. The strategy should be to fully expose, one instance where we see massive welfare fraud. Once we have all that exposed, understand, okay, here's their game plan. I mean, this is how they do it. Then you start looking countrywide and try and uncover the rest of those schemes. So I think it's perfectly legitimate. One of my concerns is how much money we flow into, for example, non-government organizations that then filter that money down to eventually probably these vans that show up at these peaceful protests with riot gear. Or fund all these legal organizations, people like Mark Elias and other folks that are engaged in the lawfare against ordinary Americans. 38 Wisconsinites who just, some of them were the alternate electors. They've tried to destroy their lives through these legal foundations and these legal firms. Again, where do they get the money from? A lot of it comes from American taxpayer funneled through non-government organizations. So again, this is massive. That's what I'm saying. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what the radical left is doing. That's literally destroying this country.
Yeah, I mean, it is completely. I go back to the voting and the voter fraud because there is no other explanation for bringing in 100,000 Somalis into Minneapolis. I mean, quite frankly, if you wanted to do something nice for them, like at the very least, put them in a climate that reflects Somalia, right? Like put them in a desert somewhere that like is more reflective of where they're from. Like, but now, now you're starting to sort of like see the full game plan here, and it's so in your face. It's just so blatant that it's impossible to ignore.
And that's 100,000 Somalis approximately. What about the millions coming in through the Biden administration, knowing full well that our census counts non-citizens in the census count, which plumps up their numbers of members of Congress, plumps up the amount of federal funding they get for their welfare programs where they don't check eligibility. Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen reports, $150 to $160 billion per year just supporting all forms of government funds to support the illegal immigration population that's coming under Biden. This is massive. Then then add to that the massive fraud we're showing. I saw one report about $1.7 million of remittances from the Somali diaspora going into Somalia, which is more than the entire federal budget of Somalia. $1.7 billion. Now, a fair amount of that comes from the United States. Where's it coming from? Probably the federal government and state governments as well. So no, this is just the tip of the iceberg. That's the most important point to make here. Yeah, target this, fully expose it, but open up your aperture though and realize, no, this is happening across the board, primarily in large Democrat-run states and municipalities and cities. This is basically done in Democrat strongholds because the Democrat Party has become radicalized and they have declared war on their political opposition. We need to wake up to that fact. This is a war declared by the radical Democrats. Even though we are a nation of immigrants, and it has helped build this country, the problem in the last few decades is the immigrants coming in here have refused to assimilate. They haven't accepted our Constitution. They want to, for example, the Somalis, they want Sharia law.
Yes.
So that's a real problem. So, no, and we can expose the voter fraud, but you actually need to enact controls to prevent it from happening. We're moving the exact opposite direction. Democrats want mail-in balloting. We expand the use of absentee voting, even though the Baker-Carter bipartisan commission said that was probably the greatest area of risk of voter fraud was absentee ballot. We doubled it in the 2020 election. So we're moving the wrong direction. This is one of the reasons I support President Trump's call to end the filibuster to get control over election law. I don't want federal control over election law, but there are basic controls that we probably need to enact nationally. And it's limiting voting time. It's limiting again, absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, all these types of things that we know fraud is committed. Our State Department goes to other countries and we give advice on how to prevent fraud, and we don't follow our own advice in our own country.
So will Republicans end the filibuster? I mean, I'm seeing actually this, it seemed kind of crazy when it was first proposed, just because I've been following the ping pong ball back and forth on this issue. But when you actually look at the logic of it, it makes an enormous amount of sense, because you can see precisely what the left has planned. Eric Holder, in a speech just last night, talked about how they will be adding 12 seats to the Supreme Court to ensure that there is a far left-wing progressive court forever in America. And where the hell is that going to, when is that ever going to stop? Is there a stomach in the Republican caucus in the Senate to actually do this?
Well, first of all, it's always Democrats that have broken precedent, that destroy the norms and take us down the slippery slope. But once that started, that really started with Harry Reid here in the Senate in terms of 60 votes. You have to recognize reality. They purged the two members, Sinema and Manchin, who held the line and didn't allow them to end the filibuster back when they had the chance to do it. Now every Senate Democrat has voted to do it. The people are here. And the ones that ran for office and any future candidates, I'm sure, are going to vow to eliminate the filibuster. So, again, believe what they say. Understand they mean what they say. And we better preemptively act. If not, we're going to really be in trouble. So, there was a real reluctance for us to change the rules to get President Trump's nominees through, but the Democrats are so obnoxious and so obstructionist that every Republican voted to change the rules so he could at least staff his administration. I think the best chance we have for eliminating the filibuster is just watch Democrats. 42-day shutdown. Completely unnecessary. Harmed a lot of people. They don't care who they hurt and destroy. Watch the Democrats perform over the next couple of months. They will do nothing to help the American public. Again, they're not actually interested in fixing the failed Obamacare. They just want to use this as a political weapon. So watch the Democrats obstruct any kind of good legislation to help our economy, help the American public. Hopefully enough of my Republican colleagues will recognize the reality that they're going to do everything they can to make sure that Donald Trump and Republicans have no success between now and the election, because all they want is they want a failed economy so they win the election. It's all about power for them. Yes. Maybe enough of my colleagues will awaken to that fact and act before they do, so that we can actually preserve this economy, so we can secure our elections, fully secure our border, have a prosperous economy, fix Obamacare, transition to a system that actually works. But again, that'll require strong presidential leadership. It target exactly the things we would pass with 51 votes. A lot of planning has to go into this, but again, it's not going to happen overnight. There's a great deal of resistance, but I think it's possible. We have central counting, which is always a problem. They deliver the ballots late, and that leads to suspicions, but we actually have a pretty good, we keep our eyes on that pretty closely. But again, I can't tell you, how much fraud is occurring. They do it, obviously, under the radar. But there's a real problem in Wisconsin, and of course, the way the Democrats react to that is, rather than work with Republicans, the Republican legislature passed laws to try and tighten up the controls. The Democrat governor, of course, vetoed it, and then they engaged in lawfare. The lawyer, Judge Trupis, who defended President Trump after the 2020 election, a man of real integrity, they're destroying him. Probably $1 million in legal fees. They've now indicted him, want to put him away for life, saying that the alternate slate of electors, which was the rational thing to do, what John Kennedy did, was a felony forgery. And President Trump has pardoned him on any kind of federal charges they may try and bring up, but these are state charges. This is the Attorney General of Wisconsin. That office issued an opinion that the alternate slate of electors was entirely proper. There was nothing proper with that at all. And then a couple of years later, now he's turning into a felony charge of forgery. So no, it's sick what the Democrats do, but they go on offense. And that's what I'm saying. Republican, we need to understand the radicalized Democrats are at war with us. They want to destroy us. That's what Jack Smith's massive partisan dragnet was all about. It's not just after Trump. It's not Trump. It's not after just a few members of the Senate or House. This is, they want to bring down the Republican Party as the opposition party. They want a one-party nation, a socialist, communist type of nation that they have power forever. That's what they want to do. And we better wise up to that fact and be as engaged in politics as they are. But that's the problem. Republicans, we just want government off our back. Democrats, government is their power. It's what they crave. It's their lifelong ambition. It's a huge advantage in the political realm.
Yes, that's right, because they eat, sleep, and breathe power, and they know the power emanates from the end of a gun, which is an old Mao Zedong quote. And so they want to control the guns, they want to control the military, they want to control the executive, the Supreme Court, and Congress forever, and they'll break any law and they'll bend any rules to do it because the will of the American people isn't behind them. It's just like, how do we channel the will of the American people the best into ensuring that they are the permanent minority, which, if we counted the census correctly, they would be, right? They would have no electoral path. I mean, after 2030, you're going to see the maps change so significantly in the electoral vote. You're going to have 10 or 12 new seats in Florida and Texas alone. California and New York are going to bleed seats based on all available projections. And I think they're trying desperately. They're throwing everything they can at the wall to stop that.
And let's face it, the legacy media, they're populated by a bunch of radical leftists themselves, so they provide cover for all this. So,
yes,
many Americans, probably a majority of Americans, primarily get the news still from the legacy media. And there's not the outrage that the media should be expressing based on what the Democrats are doing to destroy this country.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.